Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to play some games with Terapagos EX. This is Tord's list that he used to get second place at Gdansk Regional. It is a bit different than most of the other lists going around, and it has the 2 Bouffalant and a 201 Dusknoir line and a 2-2 Pidgeot line. He's also opted for a Turo and a Penny. So first let's start with the Bouffalant. If we have both of them in play, our basic colorless Pokemon takes 60 less damage from attacks. This is great. It can make our Terapagos tankier. It gives it 290 effective hit points, which is a pretty good number. But the main point of it is that it lets us not play Manaphy against Greninja decks. We just play down our 2 Bouffalant. And then Greninja can't knock out our Pidgeys or Hoots. It can knock out our Duskulls, but you know, it's just the way it is. The Penny and the Turo are pretty interesting, but it kind of makes sense. Turo can like heal Pidgeot if we need, but it can also pick up the Noctowls and let us reuse them. I think the Turo or the Penny is in the place of the Switch card because there is no regular Switch in this deck, which I have found it makes it a bit trickier to play. The Penny goes good with the Bouffalants so we can tank a hit and heal and keep our double colorless energies. We have a Thornton in here that lets us swap a basic Pokemon from our discard pile with one of our basic Pokemon in play, and it keeps the number of turns in play. So we can swap out like the Rotom on the bench for a Duskull or a Pidgey if our Pidgey gets knocked out and immediately evolve at that turn. That leads to some cool plays. Of course, we have the Era Zero, lets us have 8 bench Pokemon if we have a Terra Pokemon in play. And our Terra Pokemon is of course going to be Terapagos that does 30 damage for each of our bench Pokemon. We can do 220 damage as our max damage. And the Noctowls, I think everyone knows what Noctowl does by now, but it lets us search our deck for 2 trainer cards if we have a Terra Pokemon in play. Just make sure you have a Terapagos in play. Yeah, this deck is also playing the Lost Vacuum. I don't know if these decks were always playing Lost Vacuums, but it can let us get rid of our opponent's tool cards, or we can bump our own stadium to get rid of like damaged Pokemon or just generally weak Pokemon. This is also only playing 2 of the stretcher cards. Having a third one would be nice, but I guess 2 just barely gets there. I find this deck to be kind of underwhelming sometimes. Having the thin Dusknoir line doesn't allow for as many like plays to combo and win the game, or win the game on turn 2 or whatever. You have to get like Thornton involved a lot, and it can be kind of a pain, and you really have to be like very strict with your resources with this deck. I don't know, I think the other versions of the deck might just be a little stronger, but Tord is like, you know, a really good player of course, so he can make it work. We're getting really close to 900 subscribers, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe if you want to. But yeah, that is the deck. Let's get into the games. Alright, so we got a Palkia in the active here, so I don't really know what to expect at first, but it does end up being a Goldango deck. I don't know how decent this matchup is. In my head, it seems like a pretty rough matchup, and especially after playing it, it is definitely not the easiest matchup. They can one-shot our Terapagos pretty easily, and they also force us to get the Bouffalants down turn 1, which is pretty annoying. It definitely makes setup a lot trickier, where as normally I would just have like a perfect setup here, just grab another Pidgey and Rotom for like a couple Hoots and a Noctowl, but I do have to get the Bouffalants, and then that kind of forces me to also bench a Terapagos because I can't like bench lock myself out of a Terra Pokemon. I'll have no attacker except for I could do like 100 damage with Pidgeot, but my opponent could exploit that by just letting me sit there without being able to attack and just fully setting up their board with no threat of being knocked out. And I don't want to let that happen, so I do just put down the Terapagos and fill my bench. This is generally kind of risky and you want to avoid it. In an ideal world, you wouldn't bench a Terapagos going into a turn when your opponent can knock it out at the beginning of the game. Like, I would rather wait till next turn, but like I said, I wanted to get these other Pokemon down for my setup, like a second Pidgey and a second Noctowl, because if I only had one of each, they could knock out my Noctowl or my Hoot, and then I wouldn't even be able to get into a Pidgeot or they could just knock out my Pidgey, and obviously I wouldn't be able to get into a Pidgeot that way either. But my opponent here decides to use their Prime Catcher on my Duskull, and they're going to knock that out, which is kind of fine. And if they bump my stadium here, I would just have to get rid of Rotom, Pidgey, and either Hoot Hoot or just the Terapagos. I'm not, because I have the Stretcher in hand, so I could just get the Terapagos back with the Stretcher if I wanted. But yeah, I don't think they do end up getting rid of the stadium here anyway. And also, when I was going through my deck, I did prize Counter Catcher and Boss this game, which is pretty unfortunate. I don't know if I went that far in the deck during those searches, but I will find out this turn. I promote the Pidgey because I'm always going to get a Pidgeot out, and that has free retreat, so that is pretty nice. My opponent ends up with a 2-card hand, which kind of sucks because I really don't want to Iono them. Of course, if I needed, like if I couldn't attack or something without the Iono here, I would just use it and let them have more cards. It's better to set up than hope your opponent doesn't set up, but since I can basically do everything that I want here without playing the Iono, I'm not going to play it. And I would have much rather used Boss instead of Prime Catcher, but it's prized. I would rather use Boss or Counter Catcher, but both of them are prized, and that is kind of terrible. I have to get one of them off my prizes because a lot of times with this deck, we're going to be trying to take advantage of the lower hit point 2-prize Pokemon on our opponent's benches with all the cards like Fezandipiti, Rotom, Lumineon, all those things going around right now. That can be a pretty effective strategy. I do not get Boss or Counter Catcher off of my prizes, which is really unfortunate. That's actually going to make it really hard for me to win the game. I basically can't win the game. Not that I can't see a way to win the game now, because they're going to knock out, unless they don't knock out my Terapagos, but they're going to knock out my Terapagos. Goldengo, they're drawing too many cards. They're definitely going to knock it out. And I can't knock them out back without blowing up a Dusknoir, and that puts them down to 2 prizes, which then I have to hope that they can't knock me out after that. Which, with all these Goldengos, they're going to be able to draw a lot of cards, so yeah. We're in a pretty rough spot, not getting any Gust off of the, not getting one of our Gusts off the prizes. And now I also had to discard a bunch of bench Pokemon. But ideally here, I would be able to play a Briar, like get off a Briar turn, blow up a Dusknoir, knockout, Greninja, play Briar, and then if I had my other Gust in the deck, I would be able to just Prime Catcher up the Fezandipiti and knock that out. I'm pretty sure. I think I would have enough cards in hand for that. But I do have to Iono, because there's just no way that I could get all the cards that I needed with that hand. I could Pidgeot for Stretcher, but then I wouldn't be able to get into a double turbo. And yeah, it would just be kind of rough. Here I Pidgeot for, I was going to get Fezandipiti, but that's just putting a lower hit point Pokemon in play that could give my opponent an easier time of, taking their last 2 prizes. So I just grabbed the Dusknoir, and this is kind of a terrible position because it would be nice to just hit into this Goldengo and then knock it out next turn and take the rest of my prizes next turn. But if I do not blow up the Dusknoir this turn, they knock out a 2-prize Pokemon. I can't use it anyway, so I kind of have to. Now that I'm watching this back though, maybe I should have just retreated to Duskull for a turn. Could have retreated to Duskull for a turn, and then no, that leaves me in the same exact spot. Yeah, there's definitely nothing that. I'm just trying to figure out if there's anything I could have done different to win the game. But I'm just kind of delaying the inevitable. If I retreat into a Duskull, I could take 3 prizes with a Briar play next turn if I did that. But no, I don't know. This game was just kind of unwinnable with my prizes, I think. Maybe there's something I could have done different at the beginning of the game, but at this point, I think it's just kind of unwinnable with the line that I ended up taking. And they do flip double heads on Silene, so that just guarantees them the double superior to knock me out, or just really whatever cards they need. Yeah, even when knocking out that Gholdengo, they still drew from a few cards up to like 10 cards there. So yeah, this didn't feel like a great matchup, but like I said, if I had the counter catcher or boss in the deck earlier, I would have just grabbed that and then had access to my prime catcher at the end of the game, and I think I could have ended up winning it with yeah, just having prime catcher or counter catcher in the end of the deck at the end of the game. But either way, we do end up losing that one. So on to the next game. All right, so this game we are up against Dragapult. I'm pretty sure that this is another kind of rough matchup for this deck, unless we can just run them over with Dusknoirs. That's like kind of the main thing that I don't get about this specific build of the deck. They also picked to go second, which is kind of throwing me off. I expected to be like Raging Bolt or something. That's why I started the Hoot. But yeah, that's like, and since they did pick to go second, or since they are going second, it's a Dragapult deck. I know that they can't attack me, so I can just bench my Terapagos here and attach the energy to it, which is kind of nice. All right, like I was saying, that's the one main thing I don't get about this build of the deck. With such a thin Dusknoir line, it just requires so much to be able to do what I think that the deck is trying to do, and basically be able to just suppress your opponent's entire setup by knocking out all their like evolving basic Pokemon, or letting you 2-hit them and Iona them low or whatever. It just makes you need so much more. You need Thornton more often, you need Night Stretcher more after your first Dusknoir to even be able to use it. So that is kind of a pain. But my opponent does bench an Iron Thorns in the last turn, as you saw, which is pretty interesting. I've played against this build of the deck a couple of times. It's always kind of confusing to me and doesn't really make the most sense. Also here I grab Rare Candy and Poffin. Rare Candy is pretty obvious. I want to grab Evolve into Pidgeot. Poffin because I want to get down some Duskulls. And I can just Pidgeot for Turo to pick up my Noctowl, and now I can use it again if I want. So that is kind of nice. I Turo, promote the Pidgeot, of course, because it has free retreat, and it lets me use Prime Catcher if I want to bring up the Iron Thorns. That's not what I want to do, but you know, I have that option for as long as possible. I immediately use the other Noctowl to grab the Area 0 because I want to be able to get full value out of my Poffin, and I also grab Nest Ball because I'm going to grab a Bouffalant that turns Thorns from 2-shotting me into a 3-shot. And yeah, now I can also just fill up my bench with Bouffalant, and I'm going to end up going down to a 0-card hand here. Ultra Ball away, Ultra Ball and Boss, grab the other Bouffalant, and then I can Poffin for a Duskull. Now they could definitely punish this play by just knocking out my Pidgeot, so I'm not too sure how great that is, but even if they do that, I'm still just 2-shotting them while they're 3-shotting me, so that seems pretty good, because they only do 80 with their attack now with the -60, and then yeah, they would still knock me out with a Dragapult attack next turn, which is kind of unfortunate. Oh no, they wouldn't, because 200 minus 60 is 140. Plus 80 is only 220? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did that math right. Oh, that's kind of wild. So yeah, the Bouffalants are pretty good here. They do Poffin for 2 more Dreepies, and now they're going to hit into me for a kind of insignificant amount of damage. Maybe they should have just used the TM Evo. Pretty sure they grabbed it there. And I top deck researched. That's kind of perfect because I'm an idiot and I forgot that I couldn't use Pidgeot under Iron Thorn. So I kind of planned that whole turn around being able to use Pidgeot. which I cannot use, but I do research into a Dusknoir, and I can just Dusknoir knock out their Drakloak. I was thinking about using it to knock out the active, but I do think just keeping them out of Dragapult attacks will always make it so I win this game. This Thorns really isn't too much of a threat. I think I prized 2 Noctowls this game, yeah, so I should get 1 off the prizes, and now I can just Penny next turn if I want, and yeah, just Penny, and I can't Palpad it back because I always use already used Palpad, but that will put them in a really awkward spot because I hit into it. I would Penny, knock it out, and yeah, then they'd have no damage on the board, and I would be down to 2 prizes. Another thing I can do next turn is knock out both of their Dreepies, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing because they evolve both of them into Drakloaks. And I'm at the very least not going to knock out the one with the Psychic Energy. And I think that that would give me pretty good odds of not attacking, or yeah, of them not attacking with Dragapult. And I do have to use the Noctowl, and I can grab a Gust card. I almost grabbed Thornton by accident. Gust and Rare Candy, then I can boss up one of the Drakloaks and use Pidgeot for the other piece, or I can just grab the Prime Catcher, either or. It kind of works the same. I should probably use the boss right now. That makes more sense because Prime Catcher you can use after a supporter. Boss, you know, is your supporter for turn, so better off using that while I can. And now I can grab the Night Stretcher for the Dusknoir. This is another thing that's kind of unfortunate, is now I always have to get a Night Stretcher combo to use the Dusknoir, where I had an Ultra Ball in hand, so if there's a second Dusknoir in deck, I think I could have won the game with Thornton. I'm not 100% sure though. There probably was some kind of way that I could have done it, but yeah. We kind of just run them over. They saw what I had in hand. I was going to knock out either all their energy and go down to 1 prize, or what I was actually going to do is knock out the Drakloak on the bench, the Drakloak in the active. Now all they have in play is a Pokemon with 10 hit points left, so I'm going to win the game no matter what. Even if they boss stall, I can either Thornton into another Dusknoir combo, or just, it would have to be a Thornton action now that I'm thinking about it, because I had no Duskulls left. But yeah, gonna win that game no matter what. And that is the Terapagos deck. I think it's kind of a little bit underwhelming personally. Maybe I'm just bad though. I haven't played enough games with the deck or something, but I did lose a lot of the games that I played with this deck. There was one thing that I did notice though, is there was like a way that I could have possibly won those games, but it always involved my opponent whiffing something at the end of the game, like oh, I could have got back a Bouffalant, and then they would have needed a boss to win instead of just being able to knock out my active. And yeah, that would have given me a better chance to win, but it didn't seem like, oh, there's a guaranteed way for me to win those games that I lost. But like I said, I could just be missing something. Maybe I would need to play the deck more, but I don't really care to. I don't know, the deck just doesn't feel that great and doesn't make me want to play it more to figure it out. But either way, like or dislike, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, take care, and have a good one.